Psalm 74, a well-written song by Asaph. Remember, a well-written song is a maskil. That is the word. We don't know what it really means for certainty. There's different ways that they translate it. This version chooses a well-written song. I like the idea of a contemplative song better, or a skillful song, maybe, which is where they get the well-written from. Okay. Why, God, have you permanently rejected us? Great opening question. Why, God, have you rejected us? Why does your anger burn against the sheep of your pasture? God, why are you against us? Why are you rejecting us? So calling out to God, this is perhaps, and we'll see as it plays out, following the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. So either writing from captivity or shortly after the destruction took place. Remember your people whom you acquired in ancient times, who you rescued so they could be your very own nation, as well as Mount Zion where you dwell. So going to go this current circumstance, but then going to the ancient things that God has done. So God, this is the circumstance, but remember, call to mind how you acquired your people in ancient times. You selected them. You selected Mount Zion. Hurry to the permanent ruins and to all the damage the enemy has done to the temple. Your enemies roar in the middle of the sanctuary. They set up their battle flag. So God, they are desecrating it, or have already done so. So hurry. They invaded like lumberjacks, swinging their axes in a thick forest. And now they are tearing down all its engravings with axes and crowbars. Oh, that's interesting phrasing, crowbars. The noun occurs only here in the Old Testament. Akkadian cognate refers to a pickaxe, a hatchet, and a pick. Axes and hatchets and hammers. Okay. Crowbar is an interesting image there. Certainly would be a modern one, but they don't think they had crowbars back then. So axes and pickaxes or hatchets, hammers. You set the sanctuary on, they set the sanctuary on fire. They desecrate your dwelling place by knocking it to the ground. They say to themselves, we will oppress all of them. They burn down all the places in the land where people worship God. Okay, so what do we have on the footnote there? They're burning down the places. Well, the temple is going to be, they burn down all the meeting places of God in the land. Okay, that is, I think, a better place of saying the meeting places of God in the land. So all of the sacred places where Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob had encounters with God throughout the land. I think that might be in mind here. When they say all the land where people worship God, well, I'm thinking of the Asherah poles then. I mean, the high places, that's what I'm thinking when they say the places where people worship God instead of the meeting places of God. But that's one of those things where, like, when you say something, you don't always convey to a person what you want them to think. We do not see any signs of God's presence. There are no longer any prophets, and we have no one to tell us how long this will last. What a great, great image there. So the temple has been destroyed. They've looted it. There aren't any signs of God's presence anymore because your temple is gone and your prophets are gone. There's no prophets to tell us God's word, no one to tell us how long this will last. So God, we are sheep without a shepherd here. The temple is gone. There's no worship happening. They've taken all of the places of worship away from us. So this might be a remnant in the land. Let's pay attention to if it stays in the land at all or if it does go into exile. So how long, O God, will the adversary hurl insults? Will the enemy blaspheme your name forever? Ooh, so God, this is what they have done to your dwelling place. And here's what they do as a result of it, because they were not stopped in tearing down your dwelling place, your place of worship, your high and holy set-apart place. Now they're blaspheming you, and there's no end to them going to do this because they don't see a need to. Why do you remain inactive? Intervene and destroy him. Him, that's interesting. Why do you draw back your hand even your right hand from the midst of your chest destroy. The psalmist pictures God as having a place of his right hand inside the robe of his chest. He prays that God will pull out his hand from under his robe and use it to destroy the enemy. Okay, so they didn't do anything about the destroy him. Destroy the enemy, the nation, I think. They're the king of them. But God has been my king from ancient times, performing acts of deliverance on the earth. You destroyed the sea by your strength. Okay, so calling for God to act, going back to ancient times, so already gone to God, you've been the God of this people from ancient times. You've been my God since ancient times. Let me remind you what has happened. Let me call to mind, I should say. This is what you have done. You destroyed the sea by your strength. You shattered the heads of the sea monster in the water. When did he do that? What are we talking about here? The Hebrew text has the plural form of sea monsters, dragons, but it is likely the original enclic mem has been misunderstood as a plural ending. The imagery of the mythological sea monster is utilized here. See the note on Leviathan in verse 14. Okay, so we'll get to the Leviathan in the next one. You crush the Leviathan. So here we have sea monster. You crush the heads, plural, of the Leviathan. Okay, heads of the Leviathan, the imagery in 13 and 14 originates in Western Semitic mythology. The description of Leviathan should be compared with the following excerpts from the Ugaritic mythological text. Was not the dragon, the Hebrew tannin, translated as sea monster, vanquished and captured? I destroyed the wriggling Akalaton, the translated squirming serpent, the tyrant with 7 heads. So Isaiah calls it the tyrant with 7 heads. Note the use of plural heads here in verse 13. For all you smote Leviathan, the slippery, Baracha, fast-moving serpent, made an end to the wriggling serpent, the tyrant of the 7 heads. So Isaiah 27:1 again. In the myths, Leviathan is a sea creature that symbolizes the destructive waters of the sea and in turn the forces of chaos that threaten the established order. In the Old Testament, the battle with the sea motif is applied to Yahweh's victory over the forces of creation and in history. So the times in which God separated the dry land and overcame the chaos was over the face of the deep, or the Spirit of God hovering over the chaos. The deep is the place of chaos. The monsters are in the place of chaos. Yahweh's subjugation of the waters of chaos is related to his kingship. We also have him in the Red Sea and the crossing the Jordan. He has power over it. The calming of the sea with Jonah. He has power over it. The Canaanite mythology to Yahweh's eschatological victories over his enemies. Apocalyptic literature employs imagery as well. The beast in Daniel 7 emerges from the sea. Revelation 13 speaks of the 7-headed monster, their beast, coming up from the sea. Here in Psalm 74, the primary reference is unclear. The psalmist may be describing God's creation of the world, where he brought order from the watery mass of the Exodus when he created Israel by destroying the Egyptians in the waters of the sea. You shattered the heads of the sea monster in the water. Okay, you destroyed the sea by your strength. You shattered the heads of the sea monster in the waters. You crushed the heads of the Leviathan. You fed him to the people who live along the coast. So we have his power over, and we have his deliverance of his choosing of the people and bringing about deliverance in that way. You broke up the springs and the streams. You dried up perpetual flowing rivers. So we have crossing the river, crossing the stream here. So if we're to go in order, we would have the crossing of the Red Sea potentially here. We could start with creation, the crossing of the Red Sea. We have the springs drying up, and so we have the crossing of the Red Sea to go into the land. The Jordan River to go into the land. You establish the cycle of day and night. You put moon and sun in place. So now we're just going to go to the fullness of creation. So if we are fullness of creation, we could still be at creation, and maybe those others, though alluding to the things that you did, might be more in creation here because establishing the day and night. So, and maybe we're going to bounce back and forth because sometimes the psalmist will do that. Psalmist doesn't always follow chronology. You set up all the boundaries of the earth. You created the cycles of summer and winter. So boundaries of the earth, where the water can come and not come. Remember how the enemy hurls insults, O Lord, and how foolish nations blaspheme your name. So we're talking about the God who created all things and your enemies who are stupid. Do not hand the life of your dove over to a wild animal. Do not continue to disregard the lives of your oppressed people. So again, calling God to look at his people who are now currently being oppressed. Your dove, the psalmist compares weak and vulnerable Israel to a helpless dove. Remember your covenant promises. So God, you picked us. You made covenant promises. I'm calling on you for them. From the dark regions of the earth are full of places where violence rules. Do not let the afflicted be turned back to shame. Let the oppressed and the poor praise your name. So instead of letting those who are afflicted be turned back in shame, because we're calling out to you, let the oppressed and the poor praise your name. Why and how are they going to praise your name? Because you are going to defend and deliver. Do not let the afflicted be turned back in shame. Let the oppressed and the poor praise your name. Rise up, O God, defend your honor. So by them being oppressed, your honor, like you having no people, them being oppressed is an offense against your honor. Remember how fools insult you all day long. So fools are insulting you because they don't understand you're judging your people. You're punishing your people because they haven't been faithful. They don't understand that. They are just, they are attacking. Do not disregard what your enemies say or the unceasing shouts of those who defy you. So there are shouts against you because they see your people, the ones you called, are being punished, but they don't see it as that. They just think your God has no power. So God, vindicate them and do it now.